And we're live. Welcome back, everybody, to a new episode of the Wheelie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Atoll, and I'm joined again by Electrek's Seth Weintraub. How's it going, Seth?
I'm good.
Awesome. And we have got yet another pile of interesting e-bike and micromobility related stories to go over this week. Everything from a big fundraise for an interesting electric bike conversion kit to JackRabbit's got a new silly little micro e-bike. We've got new launches from Heybike. Can-Am came in with a couple new electric motorcycles. We're going to talk about charging and how much it really costs to charge e-bikes, and then a little something extra from Tom Cruise and some electric motorcycles at the Olympics. So where are we starting off, Steph?
All right. This wacky looking $499 e-bike conversion kit is raising $10 million.
Yeah, this is one of the strangest looking electric bike conversion kits I think I've ever seen, but I've tested it myself and it actually works really well. It's called the Clip, and it kind of looks like a unicorn horn on the front of an e-bike is sort of the best way I can describe it. It uses a friction drive, which itself is kind of an older technology, but the cool thing about this clip kit is that it literally just clips on to the front fork of a bike, so it'll fit a just huge wide range of bicycles, and then it powers that front wheel without needing any other interfacing with the bike itself. And so this is really designed for people who have a pedal bike that they really like, but they occasionally want to make it electric. They don't want to put a bolt-on wheel and a hub motor or mid-drive and commit their bike to being electric, but they just like it to sometimes be an electric bike, and then they can take it off in 5 seconds and be back to having a pedal bike. And it's a really cool concept because very few electric bike conversion kits are like that they're so easy to just pop on and off. Clip's been around for a few years now. They've raised some money before. I think they've raised something like 2 to 4 million, something like that. But now they're coming in with a really big $10 million Series A round. So it's exciting to see them being this successful so far, especially with such like a novel and interesting idea. The other thing that makes this really attractive is that it's surprisingly affordable. When you see something very like custom looking like this, you think expensive, but it starts at $499. So it's like a really cheap way for someone who's e-bike curious to take their existing bike and without a lot of investment turn it into an electric bike for any time they want, or turn it back into a pedal bike like they like to use on their normal commute or fitness rides. So to me, it's just a really cool system. Have you ever seen something like this, Seth?
We actually talked about like this as an idea, and we didn't really realize that somebody was actually doing the work instead of doing,
Is that
just the dreaming up. Um, so love the idea. There's obviously a lot of questions. Like, I don't see a battery in this thing. Like, where does that live? Um, Also,
yes,
like,
it's
yeah,
actually
go
a
ahead.
really small battery. It's in, I don't know if it's on both sides or just one. I think it's something like it's either 90 or 190 watt hours. So, very small and compact, but it's just meant for like light assist.
Yeah, and so one of the other ideas or, you know, idea thinking that we had was like, well, how good, like how much torque is this going to be able to transfer to the wheel without slipping? And this looks like kind of like a slippery skateboard wheel inside here. And I wonder, I mean, you want a little bit of slippage, I guess, so it doesn't, you know, it doesn't break the thing, but um, I just I wonder like how much torque is like this would theoretically be to help go up hills or add some power to your pedaling. I wonder how much torque can be transferred between this like little like shiny red wheel and a rubber tire that might be getting wet or dirty or whatever.
Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely, a lower power, lower torque solution. I tested this out at Microbility Europe, and it really sort of fits that European style idea of an e-bike, low torque, 250 watts or less, that sort of thing. So you're absolutely not going to be getting any serious power out of this thing. But for, the person who's already a cyclist or is at least, fit enough that they want to be able to use their bike again, to me, that's sort of the main market here. Someone who wants to just occasionally add a little bit of power to their bike, not necessarily turn it into a super powerful e-bike.
Yeah, so you got to test out a beta version, I guess, or of this. It looks like it's really easy on and off.
Yeah,
How
well, I
did
think
it
this was
feel?
even a production version already.
Okay, and how did it feel in terms of, power and weight and all that other stuff?
Yeah, so the power was definitely modest. You don't fly off the line, that sort of thing. It
Mhm,
feels like a bit of a laggy pedal assist system where you start pedaling and then you feel the assist come on. So certainly,
mhm.
it's not gonna blow anyone away. What sort of did blow me away was just how easy it was to take on and off. It was a little bit trickier for me, but the clip people who do this probably 100 times a day, like, they literally had it off in 3 seconds, like, just boop, boop, right on and off. So, I think if you own it and you sort of practice with it, it's crazy how quickly it comes on and off the bike.
Yeah, I mean, that's the dream, right? You just like, "Oh, today I'm going up a bunch of hills, so I'm gonna need my extra power," and you just throw that on there and, on a typical day where you just go straight, on flat ground, you don't need
E
something like this, so
exactly, and also, like, you don't have to buy a whole new bike. A whole new bike doesn't have to be produced. There's a lot of environmental benefits here too that just,
yeah.
if you already have a thing with 2 wheels, why not just put a little motor on it that you can pop on and off?
Yeah, and maybe if you're, a little, you know, maybe you're older or you don't have as much leg strength or had some whatever kind of issues, you could theoretically bring this with you, on a trip where there's going to be a bike ride, and you just throw this on the bike that you get, and go with other people. Maybe you can't keep up with other people, and maybe your wife or husband is a lot stronger than you on biking, so you throw this on there and you equalize a little bit more.
Definitely.
A lot of options. All right, let's move on. Jackrabbit. Oh, we like Jackrabbit. OG2 launch. The internet's favorite silly little e-bike gets big updates.
Yeah, so if you like Jackrabbit, which I definitely do, then you're probably gonna like the new updates to the OG, which was their original smaller model, not their XG, which is sort of the bigger, more chunky version. So they've added a bunch of updates here. The most visually striking is probably that the frame is a little bit more substantial. They've added that down tube there. It probably makes it a little more rigid. I think it increases the maximum weight capacity as well. But they've changed the tires. So I think they're the same tires front and back now. It's got a new handlebar setup, which spins 90 degrees. So basically, the whole thing is very flat and slips under a bed or behind a couch, something like that. They've got new headlight and taillight ports. So that was one of the complaints of the original, was that, yeah, it was like simple and minimalist, but it would have been nice if you had options for lights and things like that. So now it's very easy to add lights that actually run off of the main battery because they've got those ports on there. I think the main specs are still fairly similar, at least in terms of performance. It still goes 20 miles an hour. It still uses those tiny little batteries that are like, power tool sized. So each one gets you about 10 miles. And you can just, pop them in and out if you want to go 20 or 30 miles. You carry a couple extra batteries in your bag, or they actually fit in some of the pockets in my pants, not even like cargo pants, just like,
Wow.
Levi's kind of thing. So it's really cool to see those little batteries. The price did bump up a bit though. And now it's at 12.49, where I think it was 9.99 before. So you do have to pay a little bit for some of these upgrades, though they are still selling the original OG, not the OG2. So if you want the basic, more simplified minimalist version, they still have that there. I don't know if they're going to continue to produce it forever, but it's there for a while, which I think is still at the $999 price. But I'm really excited to see this update here because it answers a lot of the things that I think people were wishing to just have, a little bit more. When we talk about these minimalists, micro e-bikes, minimalism is great, but then it's, you kind of miss a few of the features. So I think it's really cool to see them back while retaining what makes this so neat, which is that it's so small and compact, 25 pounds, yet it feels like a bike. One thing I forgot to mention, which is, if you're not familiar with Jackrabbit, it's important to note that it doesn't have pedals, so it's technically a seated scooter. If you're being like nitpicky about the classification, it's not really a bicycle, but because it uses a bike saddle and bike wheels and bike handlebars, it feels and rides like a bike, just with like rigid pegs instead of pedals down there. So, you're not getting any of the fitness benefit of riding a bike. You don't get the option to do pedal assist to increase your range, but in exchange, you get a lighter 25-pound, very small format bike that is great for camping or students needing to put it in a dorm room, or really anyone that lives in like a small apartment in a city kind of thing, and doesn't want their bike to take up a lot of space. So personally, I'm a huge fan of Jackrabbit. I know it's weird, I know it's silly, I know it's different, and I think people who really worry about how other people see them and their appearance kind of thing might be less comfortable on a Jackrabbit. But if you're the kind of person that likes to have fun and be different, then these things are a hoot.
Yeah, I feel like I rode one maybe in, Berlin or maybe at IFA in Munich or something. It was a little bit weird, especially with the handlebars reaching out, forward so much, but, pretty quick to get used to it, and, a lot of fun on these little guys. It is interesting that there is no pedals. Like, does it still qualify as an e-bike? Like, are some e-bike police going to pull you over and say, "Well, that's not an e-bike; it doesn't have pedals"? Um, Doubtful. I mean, if anything, this is like less worrisome for those kind of folks than a typical e-bike, or especially like a big Super 73 type of e-bike. Um, It's interesting. I imagine these would be popular, like, on campuses where, you don't have a lot of space in your dorm room, or, in cities where you maybe have a walk up, and 25 pounds is a lot less than a typical e-bike to carry up and down stairs. So, but I like the product. $1,000, 1,200 bucks, little, like, obviously you can get a folder for that price, and maybe even a little less. So that's going to be the big competition for this thing. I don't know. I love
Yeah,
it.
definitely. Yeah, like, you're certainly paying for the unique aspects here. If you were
Mhm.
to say, like, compare this to Electric XP 3.0, for 1,000 bucks, you get faster speed, you get higher power, bigger battery, all
Pedals.
that stuff. It also weighs 3 times as much. So,
Right.
like, you gotta pay for these specific features, but, you're definitely right, it's for that specific niche user, which, in fact, when the bike was invented, it was actually made for student athletes. The guy that made it, I think he was a university coach or something like that, and he was trying to create something that his athletes could take, to get around campus, but that wasn't like a small wheeled standing scooter that, they're more dangerous, people fall off of them, get hurt, that sort of thing. So that's
Yeah.
kind of like the impetus for the idea was students, and something they could ride that was like safer, more stable, feels like a bike, but is as portable as a scooter.
Yeah. It's important to note that because, I don't feel nearly as safe on a scooter as I do on a bike. So if we're comparing this with a scooter, I feel like it's a lot safer. You're not going to fly off of it necessarily. You have this, the other point of balance on the seat. You got your feet on the pegs, and wide handlebars. So I think, compared to a scooter, this is going to be a nice product. Still a little pricier, but overall a nice option
Yeah, and you can see how easy it is for them to put their legs down, which I think is what a lot of people like when they're thinking like, I want more stability than a scooter.
for sure. Yeah, I mean, for me, that's the big thing. All right, let's move on. The Heybike Hauler launched as the most capable cargo e-bike to date.
Yeah, so their words, not ours. They call it the most capable cargo e-bike to date. I don't know if I would say it's the most capable, but for bang for its buck, it definitely looks pretty good. We often like to compare some of these like mid and long tail e-bikes to premium companies like Turn that really do make probably some of the most capable cargo e-bikes out there. But compared to like a $4,000 cargo e-bike, this one starts at, I want to say, 14.99, something like that. So, obviously a lot more affordable, more of a direct to consumer company than a premium company, but they do have some nice options here in this new cargo e-bike. So it takes on basically a long tail design. It's got 20-inch by 3-inch tires, so they're that kind of, some people call them semi-fat or balloon tires. They're not really 4-inch fat tires, but they give a more cushion feeling underneath you. They're urban style, so they're not like like 3-inch off-roading tires, But if you're going to be on streets that are like pockmarked, you got potholes, or you're jumping over curbs and stuff, which I think a lot of us tend to do, whether on purpose or on accident, depending on the route we're taking that day. It is nice to have those wider tires under you. It's got front suspension, a 750-watt motor, but I think it's like 1400 watts peak. So it's one of these like wink wink 750s kind of
Mhm.
thing. Um, but the big thing here is probably the battery options. So just the base battery is quite big. It's 18 amp hours, 48 volts for 860 something watt hours. But there's an option for a second add-on battery that adds another 12 amp hours. And so together they claim, I think, 85 miles of range. Now that's on pedal assist, so cut that down a bit for heavy throttle users. But that's still a lot of battery, any which way you slice it. I would have liked to see this come with a torque sensor. It's only a cadence sensor, so it's
Mm.
got a little bit of that more simple pedal assist style. On a cargo bike, I think torque sensors are extra helpful because you often got kids on the back or you've got a heavy load, and you want the bike to just start right up when you press on the pedals instead of having that sort of telltale lag from a cadence sensor. But of course, with throttle enabled bikes like this, you can overcome that downside a little bit by just blipping the throttle as you roll off from a stop. If you're like a more pedaling type of e-bike rider, that way at least gets you going, and then you can lay off the throttle and switch back to pedal assist. So not the end of the day, and it is more entry level $1,500 electric cargo bikes, so we can't ask too much of it. But I wish I could have asked for for at least a torque sensor there. But otherwise, it looks like a certainly interesting addition to the cargo bike lineup. Comes in a little bit less expensive than some of the other direct to consumer companies like Rad and Aventon and those types. Not quite as nice or as refined, but looks like a solid entry to me. What do you think, Seth?
I like it, and I love the options, that they chose. Obviously, torque sensor would have been nice, but, the weight limit on there means you can throw a couple kids on the back or, I imagine you could probably put a, smaller adult back there, uh, so, that's obviously nice. If somebody's looking at a turn or even, as you mentioned, some of the kind of mid-tier cargo bikes, this is going to be a less expensive option, but from a company that we know about that's been around for a while. We've reviewed their bikes before, and they're pretty solid. I've had a hay bike up in Vermont for years now, and have run my dog around for forever, and that thing is holding up well. So I'm pretty happy with the company, or at least that particular product. Obviously, hydraulic disc brakes are nice. The color LCD display, the 3-inch semi-fat tires, all good things. And also, something that Heybike doesn't get enough credit for is the color options they have. I really like kind of what they've done recently with their colors. This yellow one, I think, is going to be a big seller. But also the blue is nice.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love seeing more color options. I feel like we're slowly getting past the days of bikes coming in black or white. So it's
Yep.
it's fun to have like, real color options because it's not easy to vinyl wrap a bike, that's for sure.
No, no, or spray paint and get it all over the place.
Oh man. Yeah, you see some awful at-home paint jobs out there.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Let's move forward here. Um, Can-Am surprises with launch of naked and dual sport electric motorcycles.
Yeah, so Can-Am, like if you're into uh motorcycling history, I mean they were a major player in the 70s, especially on the track, tons of championships with riders on Can-Am bikes. Um but the company's had its ups and downs, and obviously they haven't had motorcycle options in years. They have had, their three-wheelers, which have been pretty popular, but a couple of years ago they announced that they were making a comeback into the motorcycling space and that they were going electric. So this was very exciting because it's always fun to see an existing legacy company enter the electric space. We see a lot of new companies, we see a lot of startups making electric motorcycles, but when you have companies like Harley Davidson or Royal Enfield or Triumph or any legacy company that says now we're going electric too, it's always great to see that buy-in from the existing players. So, and in this case, it's fun seeing Can-Am make, you know, a return to motorcycling. So they finally launched these two models after a couple of years of sort of teasing us with the intentions. We've got two models here, the Pulse and the Origin. The Pulse is your basic, like, you know, naked urban motorcycle, whereas the Origin is sort of a dual sport. You know, it's not like an adventure bike or anything, but it's got longer suspension, higher ground clearance, knobbier tires, that sort of thing. The What's interesting is they both have the same battery, but in the same motor actually, but the Origin, the dual sport version, is a bit slower off the line. I think it's something like 4.5 seconds 0 to 60 speed, whereas the Pulse is 3.6 seconds or something like that. So, you know, a little bit peppier. Um, I'm not
Is
sure
that a
exactly what that comes
gear
down to.
ratio thing, or is that knobby tires, or what do we count for that?
I'm not entirely sure. It could be both. I mean, you're certainly not getting the same street traction on dual sport tires, but I doubt
Right.
that it would have that big of an impact. So there might be some gearing. It might even be like some throttle ramping. I'm just not sure there.
Controller, yeah.
Exactly, yeah, because, you know, the kind of things that you'd want in a bike that's a little more trail ready, are certainly gonna be different than something that you're using as a commuter motorcycle every day. But it is cool that at least with the Origin, like, it's designed so that you can still use it well in the city, because at the end of the day, these are largely city motorcycles. You know, of course, with the dual sport, you can go riding trails, but neither of these have huge ranges. The battery, I think it was 8.9 kilowatt hours, if I'm not mistaken, something like 9-ish kilowatt hours. And so you're really talking like, you know, barely 100-mile range at city speeds. If you go on a highway, you can easily cut that by half or more. So,
Yeah.
you know, these are not long range motorcycles by any stretch of the imagination. They are decently powerful, 35 kilowatts. That's just under 50 horsepower. So they're certainly going to be fun. You know, they should launch pretty well. But these are not long range. These are not touring motorcycles. They're not even like, I mean, barely going out like canyon carving unless you live right by the canyon kind of thing. But for someone who lives in the city and wants like a fun, sporty commuter motorcycle, you know, you could probably go over much of LA with this. Then, you know, this would be appropriate. The other thing is that it does charge pretty fast. Like on a standard level 2 public charging station, just an hour stop is going to mostly fill that battery pack. You know, if the pack's 9 kilowatt hours and you find like a 6 kilowatt charger, like that's a pretty fast charge for a small battery. So it's not like you got to wait all day for these to charge either. But they're just not long range bikes by any stretch of the imagination. And then the last thing to cover is probably the pricing. So the Pulse, the street version, starts at I believe $14,000, and the Origin is slightly more expensive. I think it's like
16.
oh no, that's the 16 is for
Uh,
the Pulse 73, which is like their special legacy model. It's got some like body panel differences, colorways, etc. Here it is. Yeah, 14 and a half for the Origin, the dual sport model. And that's also available in a 73 edition, which sort of
mm,
marks Can-Am's you know, anniversary, and has a few, you know, I think it's different lighting, different body panels, some color changes. So, you know, if you want something special, you can get those 73 editions. But basically 14 and 14,500 for the um, basic model here for both the Pulse and the Origin. And so it's a little bit pricey in my opinion. I mean, it's not like gouging, but you can certainly get better bang for your buck elsewhere. But then this is Can-Am's first electric motorcycle, right? So they got to come in somewhere, and perhaps these prices walk down a bit in the future, or they come out with you know, new technology that helps to reduce this a bit. I don't know. It's, you know, it's not like immediately turning me off, but it's higher than I would have expected, and then I'd like to pay.
yep, I agree, and obviously zero uh, FX type bikes would be a lower starting price, and of course, there's way cheaper bikes with range similar to this. So, um, to each their own. I also thought it was interesting that they have road tax on there because that's the name of a airplane motor company. So, I wonder if that's related at all.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on here. Electric bikes, the truth about how much it costs to charge an e-bike.
Yeah, so I've heard a few times in the last few months people asking me like, all right, so if you get an electric bike, is it like when you get an electric car and suddenly your electrical bill goes up because you're charging every night kind of thing? And so I wanted to discuss this and actually like nerd out just a little bit with the numbers. We don't go too deep here, but to give people a sense of what it actually means to start charging an e-bike every day and how much it costs. And the sort of like too long didn't read version is that it costs peanuts to to own and charge an electric bike. And I think this misconception that your electrical bill is going to go up if you're riding an e-bike comes from a couple misunderstandings. The first is that people don't realize how little power an e-bike really uses, and the second is that they don't understand how cheap electricity really is. And so when you combine those two things, charging an e-bike is just incredibly inexpensive, even if you're in a state like California that has much higher prices for electricity. So it obviously very much depends on the bike. Like a very lightweight, efficient electric road bike is going to be cheaper to charge than a fat tire off-road bike. But the long and the short of it is, on average, you can usually go about 100 miles or so for 25 cents of electricity.
Yeah,
That might be twice that for a really heavy tank of a bike, or half that for a street bike. But for a dollar, you can go 400 miles, kind of thing. And a lot of people aren't even commuting 400 miles a month. So assuming you've got a pretty significant commute on your hands and you ride 400 miles a month, you're talking about a dollar of electricity that you've spent charging this e-bike, which, like, when we actually break down the numbers and look at it, always blows my mind. It's basically free.
free. Yeah,
It's rounding error to charge an electric bike.
yeah. And that's not just good for people at home, but like if you're thinking about having a fleet of these things, for instance, like you can add 100 bikes and you're still, kind of in the rounding error phase. Um, like these companies like Lime Bikes and in France they have the Velibs that are electrified, and people are like, well, how do they pay for the electricity? And it's like, well, it's actually a lot more expensive to get the batteries to the bikes than it is to actually pay for the electricity in the batteries to the bike. So um, it's just it's one of those things that it's a misconception that people don't really quite understand. So it's really good that you wrote this article. And obviously the takeaway is like you don't even have to think about if you're thinking about buying an e-bike and like, oh, how's this going to affect my electric bill? Like it's going to be hard to even notice it unless you're a crazy 100 mile a day biker.
Yeah, and even then, like, it's a couple coffees a month kind of thing. Like,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
it's it's just crazy. Yeah, it's funny, I never even thought about that, like you said, with the Beliebs, that, like, all of the cost is in the logistics, not in the charging.
Yeah. I mean, even if you're charging 10 e-bikes a night, it's nothing.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
like Coca-Cola or, like, any of these soft drink companies, like, they're not really paying to make their drink, it's like they're paying to make the packaging and moving it around. The
yeah,
drink is, like, just a tiny, tiny percentage of their expense.
exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. All right. We have one more story to talk about. If you guys have any comments or questions, be sure to put them in now so that we can answer at the end of the show. And this one's about the Olympics, which I was at, and I actually saw this sort of live. I was outside the stadium, could hear the yelling and did not see Tom Cruise on the top. But here's the story: is there's something special about that motorcycle Tom Cruise rode at the Olympics?
Yeah, so if you guys saw the closing ceremony, you might remember Tom Cruise rappelling in from the roof of the stadium. He runs around, greets some people, grabs an Olympic flag, and then he affixes it to the back of a motorcycle, which is like a very Tom Cruise kind of thing to do, and rides around the stadium and then out through Paris. But the cool thing, and I was watching this and I was like, wait a second, that bike looks kind of familiar. It
Yep.
was it was dark, it was at night, so it was a little hard to see. I was like, I think that's my motorcycle. Yeah. And so it turned out it was a live wire Del Mar, and it's Harley Davidson's first like mass market electric motorcycle after their live wire one, which was more of like a flagship high-end premium kind of product. And they could have chosen anything, but it's really cool that they embraced not only an electric motorcycle for this, but like it's such a like an American LA kind of thing to go with like Harley's electric motorcycle when they're bringing in the 2028 LA Olympics as part of this closing ceremony here. But the other thing is that this speaks to electric motorcycles getting more and more not just screen time in movies, but also interestingly, we're seeing them a lot more at like venues and events. In this case, an electric motorcycle is perfect because Tom Cruise is riding through a stadium. He's riding around people. You don't want to be like, spewing exhaust or that sort of thing. But also, we've seen this at concerts, at Coachella. Lana Del Rey and all of her dancers came into Coachella and like went up on stage on the back of Rivet Anthem electric motorcycles. And I thought that was really interesting too, because again, like they had to be ridden like through a crowd of people, and obviously, you don't want to be like spraying people with exhaust. You don't want the sound overcoming the singers. You want the riders who are actually operating these things to be able to go like super slow, so the dancers on the back can be dancing, and that's kind of hard to do when you're trying to work the clutch at 2 miles an hour kind of thing. And so it's really interesting to see these types of electric motorcycles more and more commonly being chosen for live event use and also showing up, on the silver screen. And it'll be interesting to see 4 years from now when we're even further along in the electric motorcycle space, what kind of representation we're going to see at the Olympics. Because if it's already in the closing ceremony of the Paris Olympics, sort of ushering in the LA Olympics, then who knows what they're going to have there.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before, but it's always surprising to see gas motorcycles in front of like the bike riders and the road races, and like, hey, here's an idea. Why don't you do an electric motorcycle so that they don't have to breathe the exhaust of you know. So they're getting there. I think I saw on the road races this year they still had a gas motorcycle, which is sad. But I would say Paris overall, and we talked about this last time. Paris overall did a really good job of making the city very mobility friendly. There's tons of chargers all around Paris, so that makes it easier for electric bike owners to find a place to charge if they don't, have a garage themselves, which in Paris is pretty rare. So that's great. It's also, obviously Paris is trying to be less noise pollution, less vibration, all the other stuff. So again, this is a perfect opportunity for electric bikes, and I think they made a really good decision to kind of showcase this. Although that said, they didn't really say, "Hey, this is electric motorcycle," and even more so, I think they actually put some fake motorcycle noise behind Tom Cruise in the edit. Maybe we can look at this real quick here.
Yeah, so apparently that was just in the like making of or behind the scenes, but the actual opening ceremony clip here had the real electric motorcycle noises.
Okay. Yeah, we kind of heard a little bit of that right there.
Yeah, and it actually sounds like that. Like I can attest to that's what the bike sounds like.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, like they did a good job. I mean, they obviously put it in post because it's hard to record that live, but
Yeah.
they put in the correct noises, which was very
Oh,
nice
okay.
to see. But yeah, it was the NBC making of or something where they like
Gotcha.
showed how they like filmed them going around, and that apparently I didn't hear it myself, but apparently they put in gas motorcycle sound effects.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we gotta get to that point where electric motorcycle noise is acceptable and kind of known. But
Yeah, we're slowly heading that direction. By the LA Olympics, we should be there.
hopefully that's gonna be interesting. Um I'm currently in the LA area right now, and the contrast of public transportation versus Paris is quite stark. And I wonder how they're going to get to a place where people don't need cars in just 4 years. It'll be interesting to see what they do. I'm not as optimistic as I think they are, but any improvement is something. So we do have comment here. Ray Livingood says, "Are there any plans for more electric dirt bike reviews? I've seen more of these recently on YouTube without pedals." I would say there's a lot of stuff in the Suron kind of space. Obviously, Luna's got the new Talaria Triple X and the Talaria 4. What is it, MX4 or something? But there's also a bunch of other new stuff coming out. So I think Steven's got something coming up here soon. And how about you, Mike? Anything cross your desk recently?
Yeah, so I did the Tromox MC10 recently. I'm personally not so much of a dirt bike rider. Like I've done it, but I just don't have the dirt skills. Like I'm very much a, street commuter rider. So I'm fairly conservative anytime I'm on the dirt. So I'm excited to see what Steven can do because he definitely has more dirt experience than me. Um, but there haven't been too many like what I would call legit full size electric dirt bikes announced recently. There's the Stark Forge, which is a really interesting one. But like you were saying, a lot of them are sort of falling in this in between space of like the Suron style bikes. And there, I've seen several new ones come up from mostly from Asian companies that I've never heard of before. But they might be very nice bikes. So it will be interesting to check out some more of these editions.
Yeah, and another kind of side note or digression is that we talked about how Cake went out of business recently. I have a friend of a friend, or actually a friend, who was kind of raiding one of their warehouse liquidations and got a hold of three Cake Hawk um, plus kind of semi off road e-bikes. I don't know. I wouldn't really call it a dirt bike necessarily. One of those that can handle gravel pretty easily, and definitely has some knobby tires. So I have three of those that I got for an incredible price, and we're playing with those right now. And Cake is kind of coming back to life, it sounds like. So I was going to kind of, I don't know, do a review of their old bikes for their new company. Yeah, I don't know what the new
Yeah,
thing is going to look like, but I think that would be um, good to do.
yeah, that would
Um,
be great. Cake's the only
yeah,
motorcycle I've crashed, so be careful on that one.
that's right. I
I
remember
think you
that. That
you
was
saw
also.
me on that gravel patch. Yeah.
I think we have it on video. In fact,
Yeah.
maybe that'll be a blooper video here or a part of the show. All right. Actually, Hero says last week I asked if Expedition had any direct competition, and now we have the Heybike Hauler. That's a good point. Which seems to fit all the requirements, and I've always wanted a yellow e-bike. Well, there we go. So he's asking, are we getting a hauler in for testing soon?
Yeah, Heybike says they've got one on the way to me now, actually. I don't know if it's yellow or not. It's whatever they choose to let me borrow, but hopefully, because I agree that yellow one is the nicest looking of all of them. The blue one was kind of nice, but I just love bright colored bikes.
Yeah, yeah. I hope that comes in a shiny, fancy color. All right, that's all for the comments.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in again, and we'll be back here in another 2 weeks for another episode of the Wheelie Podcast. See you next time, everyone.